Statement by Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to issue a very short statement on electoral modernization. As I understand, there are some 15 people outside wanting to hear about electoral modernization. I want to say to the Parliament, Mr. Speaker, that since the engagement of Sir Dennis Byron and his submission of his first draft report, which was submitted in December, I have met with Sir Dennis for this year on 2 occasions to discuss his recommendations in the draft report. There would have been a third meeting yesterday at 3 p.m. with Sir Dennis Byron. And Sir Dennis Byron requested a postponement of that meeting. Because of the importance which myself and this government place on electoral reform, I indicated to Sir Dennis Byron that I am prepared to meet with him today, February 7th, at 1:30 p.m., notwithstanding the fact that Parliament takes precedence over all my other engagements. I've decided to set this meeting for today. So I shall meet with Sir Dennis Byron today at 1:30 p.m. And my hope is that this will be the final meeting that we will have before he submits his final report. I also want to say to the Parliament and the people down there that in the terms of references of the engagement of Sir Dennis Byron, the drafting of legislation was not part of it. At the request of Sir Dennis Byron and the chairman of the Electoral Commission, I authorized the engagement of a legal drafts expert to draft all of the legislation to form part of the submission on electoral reform. And as Minister of Finance, I provided all of the resources to pay for the legal consultant to draft those legislation. I have said to Sir Dennis Byron, and I will say to the Parliament of Dominica, to Dominica, that this matter is the matter that I wish to put to rest once and for all in our country. And I wish to come to the Parliament to seek parliamentary approval of the new legislation by April of this year, so that the process of implementation can begin immediately thereafter. And so I'm hoping that this meeting this afternoon, Mr. Dennis Byron, will be the final one, and that we will receive the final report from Sir Dennis Byron the soonest, so that there can be consultation with stakeholders. Because consultation with any politician or any group of politicians is not the final point of consultation. The people of Dominica must be consulted on this very important matter of their right to be given, the right to vote in Dominica, if they so choose to register and to vote in Dominica's election. So I want to make it very clear, Mr. Speaker, that we shall continue to engage in this matter of electoral reform with the highest sense of transparency. The highest sense of transparency. We have absolutely nothing to hide or to be afraid of with this process, because the records will show that this is the only political party in our country's history that has taken the responsible approach of engaging with the modernization of our electoral processes in Dominica. But I will say this also, that every election that we've had in Dominica, prior to and post our independence, were all free and fair. And everyone accepted those results. But there has been a culture in our country to give the impression to the international community that our elections are not free and fair. We are all here today, Mr. Speaker, because a process under the Constitution and appropriate laws of Dominica will recognize, and people demonstrated their franchise and the constitutional right to vote in our elections. This is why we have 21 elected members of parliament sitting here. And this is why we have 9 nominated persons, senators, sitting in the parliament today. And everyone who wanted to vote and who was on the voters list was never hindered from being open voting. And all the independent observers who came to observe our elections declared that they were free and fair elections in Dominica. And I will go back to 2019, that even in 2019 election, when there were even external involvement in our elections by the OAS and others, with the Secretary General of the OAS, the OAS itself declared in 2019 that there were free and fair elections in Dominica. And in this election, Mr. Speaker, you know who the first who congratulated me as Prime Minister? The Secretary General of the OAS. And so it is a disservice to our country and right-thinking Dominicans. Forget about your political persuasion, but be guided by your conscience and your commitment to our country and your professed love for Dominica and your gratitude to our country that has given all of us what we have, that we must not give the international community the impression that the conduct of our business in Dominica is not done in a transparent and honorable way. It's not good for us. This is not politics. This is being anti-Dominica. And so let us engage ourselves in a serious, mature manner. If we say we truly want the electoral modernization, let us engage ourselves in a serious, mature, transparent manner, and let us bring this matter of electoral modernization to a successful and transparent end. I give the people of this country and this parliament the most sincere assurances that this matter of electoral reform in Dominica, electoral modernization in Dominica, will continue to be conducted in a transparent manner. And that demonstration is recognized by the engagement of one of the most prominent legal luminaries in our Caribbean, Sir Dennis Byron, to assist us in examining in a dispassionate, objective manner our electoral systems and to see what we can do to engage this. And I will say to the public and the parliament again that in furtherance of his work as Prime Minister of this country, I wrote to the Secretary General of the Commonwealth and the Secretary General of the Organization of American States, soliciting their expert guidance and human resources to assist us in even reviewing that which Sir Dennis Byron would have submitted to us, and to ensure that it meets international best practices based on their own knowledge of electoral laws and electoral processes. And my final point to us, the issue of citizenship of our country and the issue of the rights and privileges of citizens of Dominica, and the fact that many people died to ensure that we have this franchise to vote, a very important and solemn right, And in many countries in the world today, there are many citizens who do not have that right to vote. It is important for us to set aside narrow partisanship and recognize our greater duty and obligation to the people of this country, and to ensure that in the process of electoral modernization, that no Dominican is denied the opportunity to get registered if he or she so chooses, and thereby denying him his right or her right from voting or elections. I want to say to us in Dominica that if we allow this to happen, history will not be kind to us, and we shall live with our consciences being haunted by our letting down of our forebears who fought to get us where we are today as a free-spirited, independent, democratic country. And so let us not, I'm not in this politics business, Mr. Speaker. I am here in the Parliament for 23 years, January 41st past. So I'm not in this business of playing politics and everything, Mr. Speaker. This as a history of student, as a student of history, and somebody who has a very strong ideological view on these things. We must not come here to play politics in this country on this thing. And we're not on this side afraid of any modernization processes, because we know that under any circumstances, when we present ourselves to Dominica, they will put us back in a and truth be told, I would like to see this process come to an end at the earliest time, and I'm hoping that we can come to Parliament just for one matter. We'll convene Parliament, Mr. Speaker, just for one matter. And if that day can be a Saturday or Sunday, then let it be. Just to pass the legislation dealing with electoral reform. So I'm saying to all those listening to me that if you're serious about electoral reform, let it happen. But I will say this to those who do not want it to happen, that you can jump high, jump low. There will be electoral modernization in Dominica. Because there are some who say they want it, but do not want it. Because they want to continue to give the international community the impression that this government doesn't want electoral modernization or electoral reform in Dominica. And so I'm saying to all that I want it. And I want it now. And we will put all of the resources to ensure that it happens in the likeness and the image of the Dominican people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Introduction of...
Mr. Speaker, as I said, I have a 1:40 meeting. And I'm moving to suspend the House until 3 p.m. this afternoon. Thank you.
I beg to second, Speaker.